to introduce to you Larry from Little Rock, Arkansas. He belongs to the Dunbar group of Alcoholics Anonymous, and he's going to come up here, start us off for the weekend, and he's going to carry his wonderful message to us. Larry, will you come up, please? I'm going to give you some water here in case you...
Thank you, Sally.
Thank you, Larry.
Good evening. My name is Larry and I'm an alcoholic. Such a great crowd. First of all, I would like to thank my higher power, whom I choose to call God. I'd like to thank Sally and the newcomer group in Bristol reunion. And I'd like to thank Alcoholics Anonymous, because without that, we wouldn't be assembled here this evening. I'm honored and at the same time very grateful and humbled to be able to be a vessel and a servant of such great responsibility. And as I start tonight, I will do my level best to sort of just kind of lay a little groundwork and also try to just do my level-headed best to make some things as simple as it was to me when I came into the program. And also a person to most of you all who are familiar with helped me, and that's a guy named Joe McHugh. So really the only thing I'm just doing is Paul parroting some things that he passed along to me, and so with that I'll just do my best. I have to have both of these.
Larry, I switched it off.
That's okay.
You switched it on.
Not yet. I have to use this too, right? This one is fine? Great, okay. I thought that he wasn't able to record through this one, but that's great. Okay, first of all, as Sally said, I'm from Little Rock, Arkansas, and my home group is the Dunbar group, which Joe McHugh is the founder of that group. And our group has been around 40, going on 41 years. And when we talk about Alcoholics Anonymous, and we talk about this disease that has befell most of us in here, we look back through the annals of time. And also I want to give a disclaimer. I may use the Bible as a historical reference, and that's all. And one thing, it is a historical document, and that's all I use it for. And that's down through the annals of time. We look back of the use of alcohol. And the first recorded use of it was back in the book of Genesis. And the second was in the book of Proverbs. And if you know anything about the chronology of time, we're talking about a period of time that is counting down to the year of one. And here we are at the year of 2006. So you've got 4,000 years approximately down to the year of one. And then you got 2,006 years on the ascension of it. So we're talking about approximately about 6,006 years that alcohol has been in the society of humans. And back in Proverbs, it was written about it then, and this is not verbatim, just sort of off the top of my head. It says, "Who has woes? Who has sorrows? those that tarried along with the wine. And it said it would be if I was at the top of a ship's mast, the way the mast sways. And also, like on the tossing deck of a ship when the ship is spinning around. And it also goes on to say, it would be if they had beaten me and I felt it not. And it says, thine eyes shall behold strange women, or men, and a mind shall utter perverse thoughts. And then it says that it has the bite of a serpent. And after doing all of that, it says, still they rise in the morning and they seek it yet again. And that's all that was given about alcohol. You see, alcohol has not changed, and human nature has not changed. I don't care where you're from, whether you're on top, down, under, in the middle, if you mix alcohol with human nature, you're bound to have some type of problem. And that's the great thing about our program. And that's the great thing about what we have to offer. It transcends sex, culture, race. It doesn't make any difference. Alcohol is a great equalizer. It doesn't make any difference who you are. And this program that we have is one of such that is of spiritual nature, and it transcends anything that we can ever come up with. But it's a great, great effort in regards to, as we were talking a little bit later, about how that it brings people together that normally wouldn't mix. And so we think about this, and then not until 1930s, that Silkworth, a little doctor who loved drunks, came and worked with over 50,000 of them. And I seem to think that he was divinely inspired himself, just as Bill was. There's no way that he could have came upon what he calls an opinion and it would stand the test of time. You see, what he called his opinion stands today as the basis of which we understand the nature of the disease. And it has not changed. As a matter of fact, most people have done research and has confirmed what he discovered or was revealed to him by working with over 50,000 alcoholics. He didn't work with mice or monkeys or anything like that. He worked with alcoholics. And what he talked about was that our bodies was just as abnormal as our minds. And he says any description of the alcoholic that leaves out the body is incomplete. And he called it back then an allergy. He said he didn't like using that word, but that was the best word that he could use. And as we look at it today, he used it perfectly. Because when you look at an allergy is an abnormal reaction to a food or a chemical substance. You know, we had a problem with that because our meager understanding of an allergy was one of such that was, when we thought of an allergy, we thought of a physical manifestation, such as runny nose, sneezing, welts, dysentery, swellings. But this is an allergy that is not like that. This is an allergy that you can't see. This is an allergy that you can only feel, and it's only produced by the substance alcohol. And we look at that because it sort of really kind of threw us when people told us we were allergic to alcohol. I said, allergic to alcohol? I'm not allergic to alcohol. Well, yes we are. Because when I take a drink of alcohol, not only do I experience a craving, but I break out in things like foolishness, dishonesty, homelessness, and do foolish things like urinate on myself, make a fool out of myself, just uncontrollable ignorance. And the thing is that we were talking about it a little bit this evening when we try to deal with this particular condition. There's another part of my mind, now that's what my body does, but there's another part of my mind that crowds out every bit of reason, logic, and any type of rational thought that I could muster. And that's the good thing about it. Because it doesn't make any difference whether you have an IQ of 150 or an IQ of 40. It will render you completely and totally hopeless. And that's the thing about this. You see, when we talk about alcohol, it's a twofold illness, and we talk about the body first, and we look at the body. And when a person puts alcohol in their body, what it does, the brain creates enzymes of sufficient quality and quantity. Now this is what science has come up with on Silkworth's opinion, because Silkworth says the body is sickened as well as the mind. In the description of the alcoholic that leaves out the body is incomplete, because before Silkworth came along, everyone was saying we were weak-willed, we were sorry, we were immoral, we weren't any good. And Silkworth says there's something else that goes along with that. And until he explained this, we could never ever account for some of the things that we did. And when you put alcohol in the body, it creates enzymes to break the alcohol down, to metabolize the alcohol. And it metabolizes the alcohol down into acid aldehyde, diacetic acid, and also into simple carbohydrates, and it passes out in the body. It's carbon dioxide, sugar, and carbon dioxide, sugar, and I just lost my thought. Water, thank you. That's the good part about this. Now, these enzymes that are created have sufficient quality and quantity in how we metabolize alcohol. And this is at the approximate rate of 1.5 ounces per hour. So literally, when we take a shot of alcohol, a lager of beer, glass of wine, that's approximately 1.5 ounces or an ounce. And when we drink it, it should process out of our body in 1 hour. And we should breathe it off as carbon dioxide. We should burn it off or store it as fat and sugar. Or we urinate it out as water, or we perspire it out of our pores, but it gets out of our system at approximately 1 hour. It should do that. And that's the way that normal people metabolize alcohol. And that's the physical aspect of it. But that's 9 out of 10 people that metabolize alcohol this way. But Silkworth said it was this. He said it was a disease. And basically what he's saying is back from ease, dis-ease. 9 people are at ease, which is these people over here, and 1 is dis, which is back from ease. That means that we can't metabolize or use alcohol safely. I'll take a little sidebar here. when I was talking about the history, and you all have to forgive me because I think I'm a little rusty on this century, but I think some of you all may know that I think it was about around the 13th or the 14th century here in England, before there was a United States, that this country tried to control the drink by a method called drinking to the peg. They had a peg that they would put in the bottom of an ale cup, and the barkeep could only pour that much ale. The problem with that psychology is that they didn't tell you how many cups you could drink. You just drink less more. So you see, even back then, they had a problem trying to control the consumption of alcohol. Back in about the 13th or 14th century. Here, it was a great problem back then. So this person here, and we look at ourselves, we're in the minority. We look at the room is filled, but 9 people can drink alcohol safely. There's one that can't. And let's look at what happens with this one here. He takes alcohol into his system, and the body creates enzymes created by the liver and the pancreas, and it breaks it down to acetaldehyde, diacetic acid, acetate level, but when it gets right here, it lingers. And I got this backwards. It's diacetic acid in acetate level, but it lingers right here. Instead of passing through the body as carbon dioxide, sugar, and water, it lingers right here and creates a craving. Now, it eventually passes through the body, but it takes more than 1 hour. As a matter of fact, when it gets here, it lingers here longer, and it creates this craving, and this craving produces a second drink. And what happens at that point is that you're taking another drink before you process all the alcohol out of the body. So we put alcohol on top of alcohol. And that's why we lose consumption or control of the consumption of alcohol that we have, because of this chemical reaction, this metabolism process. Now here's the part to it, because most of us may not have this condition readily at the beginning, and that's why Silkworth says we can develop it slowly over the period of time. We were talking last night, one of my friends that was telling the story, and they had sort of like a honeymoon period. Well, they drank for several years before this condition developed. Matter of fact, about 15, 16, maybe 20 years. But I myself, the condition was hereditary with me. I immediately had this problem. The first time that alcohol was introduced in my life, I craved for the second drink and I got drunk. Now all this is elementary. This is just giving us an explanation why we can't drink safely. It doesn't make any difference how much we drink, or when we drink, or who we drink with. What happens is that when we drink, can we stop at 1 or 2? And the thing is we look at this process, because this craving produces a second drink, and the second drink produces a craving as hard as that, and it produced a third, and the last thing out there, this number can be infinitum. But the last thing, we can be laying on the street, all banged up, and someone comes along and said, "Mister, can I help you?" And say, "Yeah, give me a drink. This craving is the last thing." And what normally stops us is we pass out, black out, get locked up, or get knocked out or something. And this will sort of stop this for a while. But the main thing is that we inevitably always start back. So this is elementary in the body. But the problem is, the crux of the problem is in the mind. Because we look at it this way. It would be elementary if we never took the first drink. And we look at it like this. Alcohol, acetaldehyde, acetic acid. And we look at it like this. This is the body. This is the mind. And this is a craving. Because once we put the alcohol in the body, it produces a craving, and we go through the well-known spree. Now the problem over here with the mind is that all of us have what we call an emotional barometer. We're emotional beings. That's another makeup of us. We're physical and we're emotional. And you know, it would be great if we'd never take another drink. But see, the first drink over here is taken in the mind. The mind has to give us permission to start, and it also has to give us permission to stop. Now, I want to take a little sidebar here and kind of ask you kind of consider something. Because if you were like me and a lot of other people that we meet, and we talk about a disease, allergic to alcohol, lack of power and things like that, you know, that's sort of, so I say passe to us. We'll say, oh, I don't have a problem, you crazy. But have you ever stopped to think why that we ever took the first drink against forebodings? What type of thinking that a person has when someone in authority and trust and respect, such as our parents, our coaches, our teachers, someone that we hold dear to tell us that we should never drink alcohol, but yet we make a decision to put alcohol in our lives. Now, they've given us forebodings on other things, not to do this, not to do that, and we've adhered to some of those. But why didn't we adhere to that with alcohol? That lends itself to something is wrong with our thinking and our decision making before we even touch a drink. I can remember back with me that I had problems with self-esteem, I had problems with anger, had problems with fear. And I can remember very vividly of how I looked at myself in regards to the scheme of society and also my community and my family, even how I fit in my family. I wasn't comfortable. But when alcohol was produced in my life, I felt a sense of ease and comfort. And not only did I feel a sense of ease and comfort, I couldn't stop with the first drink. You see, it's not the 10th or the 100th or the 500th drink that gets you, it's the first one. You see, it's not the caboose, it's the engine. It's the engine of the train that kills you. So when we're looking at this part over here would be academic. We could live with this condition of the body. As a matter of fact, to the contrary, all of us or a bunch of us in here is living with this condition. But how do we deal with the mind? You see, it happens like this. We have what we call an emotional buildup. Our emotions build up to a point where they're uncontrollable, we can't, and someone introduces a drink. And we reach over here and take this drink, and at the same time we're taking this drink suppresses our emotions back down to this level. Now it suppresses the emotions back down to this level, but at the same time, it's setting off this craving. And this craving is uncontrollable, and we go through the well-known spree, And we end up guilt and remorse. And we're riddled with guilt and remorse. And when we're riddled with guilt and remorse, then we become irritable, restless, and discontent. That's what our book says. And when we're irritable, restless, and discontent, at the same time, our mind remembers the sense and ease and comfort that comes at once by taking this drink. And our mind remembers this drink. Now, over here, we talk about an allergy. Over here, it's an obsession. What is an obsession? An obsession is an idea that overcomes all other ideas. Silkworth uses two or three terms. He uses illusion, delusion, and obsession. And all three of them, if you look up, it amounts to one thing: a lie. We begin to believe and we begin to forget any reason, logic, or rational thinking over here. When our mind is fixed on getting comfortable, we cannot bring with sufficient force, even the last week, or the last month, the pain and suffering that alcohol brought to us. So we succumb to this obsession, and we remember the sense of ease and comfort that comes at once, not later on, but at once, by this first drink. So we emotional build up, we reach over here, we take this drink, and at the same time it's suppressing our emotions, but it's setting off this craving again, and we're off and running again. And we repeat this over and over again, over and over, and this is what we finally come to ourselves, and we'll tell ourselves, well, I'm going to quit. That's what we'll tell ourselves. I'm going to quit this. And we repeat the alcoholic national anthem, and that is, I'll never do that again. But we always do it again. So when we're looking at this process here, one of such is that we finally come to a realism that really, that we say we're going to quit, so we'll take and put willpower in here. Second will, that's what we're saying. Now, you know, I've been successful with everything in my life, and I can do anything that I put my mind to. That's what we tell ourselves. I know that's what I told myself. I was pretty well in school and academics. I was a good athlete. And to myself, I didn't look too bad, and I was pretty successful in everything else. And you know, when it came to my alcoholism, every problem that I got into, I either lied, bullied, or manipulated my way out of it with my wits. Some type of way I always would escape. But when this process set in completely and totally, there was no way, no how that I could ever escape from this. It had me. As Bill said, I had met my match. Alcohol was my master. That was the only thing that I couldn't get out of. Everything else I could sort of wiggle and twist my way out of. But when this condition hit me, the same power that I was using on all of my other problems, with concern to my intellect, and with concern to my stamina, and with concern to my successes that I had achieved in life, I could not use over here. Because this obsession of my mind rendered that useless. When the obsession hit me, it crowded out of everything else. I was basically in a situation where my willpower, my determination, everything that I had used to succeed in the past was not working on this. I couldn't use it because every time my emotions got to a point, it would crowd out any type of reason, a logic, or rational thinking that I would have, and I'd always succumb to, I'm only going to take one, or this time it's going to be different, or something would cause me to make the sacrifice, and I'd reach over here and grab this drink, and I was drinking against my will. And even when it got to a point where I kind of knew that it would happen, I would still say, well, it's not going to be as bad. I know I'm messing up, but it's not going to be as bad. Then I tried to stay at home. I tried to drink around different people. I tried a lot of measures, everything that I could muster up to try to reduce the consequences that I know was inevitable, but it never did work. You see, every time that I reached over here and took this drink, I could never determine what the outcome was going to be. Never. Sometimes it wouldn't be as severe. Sometimes it would be greater. But I never could. And then it got to the point where I would be completely blacked out. I was losing parts of my memory that I can't even recall today as we speak. And that's a scary deal when we get to blacking out. So when I put willpower in here, it worked for a little while. But this is what will do. You see the emotional barometer, it rises here, and the first thing it does is that you lose your job. Willpower blocks that one. You're white knuckling it. Next thing comes along. After I lose my job, I get my car repossessed because I can't pay the car note. Willpower blocks that one. Well, the next thing comes along. I've lost my job, I've lost my car. My wife wants a divorce. It's getting greater. Well, it sort of blocks that one. But then I'm sitting there, no job, no car, wife is on the out, and then I see her with someone else. Doesn't block that one. That one gets bad because I tell myself, if you were going through what I was going through, you'd need a drink too. And I would make that okay for me to drink. And at that particular time, my emotions at an all-time high, because guess what? I've never ever in my life dealt with emotional stress at that level without the drink. So I succumb to this obsession. And this obsession tells me that no matter what it is that I'm going through, that guess what? One drink is not going to hurt. Matter of fact, I remember the sense of ease and comfort, and I'll tell myself, I'm just going to drink a little bit just to take the edge off, just to relax so I can think. That's what I'm telling myself. Now here's the kicker to it. At this particular time over here, you see the mind is a marvelous mechanism. It can only do one thing at a time. You can either think or you can feel. A lot of times we think we're feeling, but really we're feeling and we're not thinking. And when we're in a process like this, we're not thinking. We can't think. We're just experiencing feelings and emotions. Now, feelings and emotions, when you look at them, they can either be positive or negative. Now, we don't want to use the word good and bad because that would lend itself to a different psychology. But we can look at them positively or negatively. When we are experiencing negativity, we look at feelings and emotions that there's nothing more than an indication that something is wrong. Just like the indicators on the dash of the car. When a light pops on, it doesn't have to be something negative, but it's an indicator that you need to pay attention to the light. It could either be a malfunction, or you could be low of water, or low of oil, or low of gasoline. But you need to pay attention to the light. And you need to address the indicator. Here, the only way that we can address our indicator is with a drink. Now this process here is proven evidently over here on this side that we can't use this solution. And I say that to say this, because when we start off, this emotional barometer here is the problem. And this drink over here is a temporal solution. And we connect this problem and solution together over and over and over, and that becomes a success principle. Because that's why that when we experience a problem, the only solution that we have is a drink. And we follow that over and over and over again. Have a problem, have a drink. Have a problem, have a drink. Then it's have a drink, have a problem, have a problem, have a problem. You see, it gets to the point where our problems have problems. We create problems on top of problems. We start off with a small, minute problem like the sun is shining. Or we didn't get our newspaper. Or someone pulls in front of us. A small problem. That's how we start out. But then we turn around and follow this fellow that pulled in front of us all through the city, be late for our work, talking about his ancestors, and guess what? And we create another problem with a problem. So we have to look at it. The only thing that we can do is think about this drink as a solution. So in this process here, we have to find a way that willpower does not work on this. And the reason that willpower cannot work and will not work is because willpower only works on the truth. When we can see the truth about something, willpower will work on it. But willpower will not work on a lie. As a matter of fact, the same power that you're using trying to stay away from the drink is the same one that tells you that it's okay. Because at this time over here, you're not using your mental faculties in regards to thinking and processing. What you're doing is using your emotional and your feelings in regards to trying to get some degree of comfort. Here's another thing. You know, the mind is a marvelous mechanism in a situation like this. And I like to use a little humor. Like we're sitting here all the night, you know, and let's just say, we call it in the States, we call it a wedgie. But basically what it is your knickers. Your knickers get caught up in there and you get uncomfortable. And you're sitting in a room of people and you can't reach back and pull them out, so you're sitting there and you're squirming, you know, and you get uncomfortable, and the more you squirm, the more they move. And you can't get your knickers out. Now, you know, that gets to be a problem to the point that you can't focus. So you have to get up and remove yourself out of the room, pull your knickers out and come back and you're comfortable and you can think. But while you are experiencing that, you cannot focus and think on what's being said because you're uncomfortable. Now I say that because all of us have experienced a situation like that. When we're uncomfortable, we can't focus and we can't think. That's the same way this emotional barometer. I don't care who it is or what it is. If someone is trying to tell us something and we're uncomfortable, we can't focus. Now, that's just a small uncomfortability. But now, when we're uncomfortable up here in our minds or our emotions, that's about 50 or 60 times greater than being physically uncomfortable. So there's no way, no how, any way, that when we get emotionally uncomfortable, that we can bring with sufficient force the problems of the last week or the last month. Now here's another thing about that. The first step. We're powerless over alcohol, which is this. This is what makes us powerless. And this is why we can't drink. We can drink, but we can't drink safely. A lot lot of us can come to that realism quick, that we're powerless over alcohol. It doesn't say that you have to admit that you're an alcoholic. It just says that you admit that you're powerless. That's a pretty simple start. Powerless over alcohol. Well, once we accept this and admit this, and the second thing is, okay, since I'm powerless and I can't drink it, well, what do I do? Well, we found out over here, hence, the other part of the first step, slash or hyphen, that your life has become unmanageable. Now, that's the part we have a problem with. How can you tell me that my life is unmanageable when I got a successful business? I got 2 or 3 degrees, and I'm educated, and I'm not a derelict, and I'm head of this corporation. You can't tell me my life is unmanageable. That's the part that gets most people, the unmanageability of life. That's why I'm spending so much time on this emotional barometer, because this is the part where the program works, not the fellowship. All of us in here collectively cannot and will not be able to deal with a person's emotions. The solution to this problem must come from a power greater than us to deal with emotional stability in life. We're talking about being able to unmanage life because of mere facts of who we are, what we think of ourselves, how we fit into the scheme of things, who we think we are and who we think we ought to be, and why we're not who we think we ought to be. You see, and I'm being generous with this statement, most of us, if not all of us, we are the people who we are. And then we're the people who we want to be. And then we are the people who do we really, really, really know we are. Because we present a facade to the public, but that's not who we really are. And the people that we really want to be, we don't have the tools nor the power to change ourselves. All of us in here now have such things as what we call character defects, and we know them, and we try to suppress them, and we try to manage, but at certain times, they cause us problems. And they cause us great, great problems. They causes us embarrassment, and they cause us economic problems, they cause health problems, and they cause problems in regards to getting along with your fellow man. And you can tell a person with these problems. They're resentful all the time, they're fearful all the time, and they carry around a lot of guilt and remorse. They can't even get along, they can't even function or get along with a plant. They can walk by a plant and see a plant and kick the plant. That's how messed up they are with life. And you ask them and greet them and say, what a great day, and they say, what's good about it? They can't see anything. So this problem over here that we have with unmanageability, that's the problem. That's the crux of the problem. We can't change this condition of the body, but that's why if we can make some personality change and bring this emotional barometer down here where it's at a level where it's not necessary to take a drink. If we can make some changes in our personality, we will never experience the obsession, and hence, if we don't experience the obsession, we'll never take the first drink, and if we never take the first drink, we'll never go on the well-known spree. So, it's not just a matter of putting the plug in the jug by not stopping drinking, it's stopping the starter. Because this is where the first drink takes place, in the mind. The mind has to give you permission to stop. Everything proceeds in thought. And you have to ask yourself, what were you thinking about? Because that's what our book talks about. The thought preceding the first drink. That's where we're insane. We go temporarily insane on the first thought preceding the drink. And if we do this over and over and over again, that denotes unmanageability. That means that we can't manage life with or without the drink. Let's say that again. We can't manage it with or without. That means we can't handle it and we can't leave it alone. It's like being in a bad marriage. You're in love with someone you can't stand. That's a bad situation to be in. It's like this. We got it bad and that ain't good. That's real. I'm telling you, that's a situation. You can cut it up, slices any way you want to. But it's a situation where you're in. And if you have these two components present in your life, these two together, you can't drink because of this and you can't quit because of the obsession. And you put these two together, it renders us powerless. And that's what Silkworth says the first step. He says that with all our ultra-modern technology, he says that even the doctors lack the ability to produce the powers of good. They can't do it. And Silkworth looked at this and gave us this, and scientific data today just confirms this, that we are people that are in the grips of an illness, whereas we can't drink safely and we can't quit. We can stop, but we can't quit. In the first step of Alcoholics Anonymous, the powerlessness, really, and the unmanageability is over here. Because this is where the power is going to work. You know, I hear people a lot of times. I've seen some people use measures like exercise and everything, but we're not talking about changing our physique and how we look. We're talking about changing how we think. Because what we think and how we think is the problem. You see, from the very beginning, I had a problem with my thinking. And my thinking caused me to drink. And then I had a problem with my thinking and my drinking. So when I quit drinking, guess what I had? I still had a problem with my thinking. Now, it's hard to tell a person that they got a problem with their thinking. But you know, when we get further on in this, we're going to be talking about how our thinking is related to what? Who we are. And it's called a thing called self. How my thinking relates to me, and how I relate to me is how I relate to you. And how I relate to you is how I relate to society. And my thinking will tell me that it's okay for me to do things against you in society as long as I'm satisfied. But you know what? That's temporal. Because that's a trick within itself. And that hence is the unmanageability of life. As long as my satisfaction is attached to something that I'm doing to you and for me, it's a trick. Because we're going to talk about the personality change that's going to happen in the mind that's going to allow us to be satisfied and to be confident and to be at peace within our own skin. We see the problem is an inside problem, and we're always looking for an outside solution. If I had a better job, if I had a better mate or spouse, if I had a bigger house, bigger car, that would solve this problem. You see, Carl Jung wrote Bill Wilson, and what he said was, man's thirst for alcohol was on a low level craving for man's thirst for wholeness, hence the union with God. And he said the helpful formula for understanding this is spiritus contra spiritum, which means it takes a stronger spirit to overcome a weaker spirit. And it's not by happenstance that we call alcohol spirits. Jung wrote Bill Wilson this letter. And see, we have a thirst for wholeness. And we go through life trying to fill this void of this emotional being in the emotional barometer with some outside means. And it's a trick for the person who plays that. Now, we do have some degree of intellect. The reason we have some degree of intellect, if we hit ourselves on the head with a hammer, we know that it's going to hurt. And we can see that. And Bill uses the analogy in the book when he talks about the jaywalker. When the person gets a thrill out of running in front of fast buses and trolley cars and vehicles. And we would call that person crazy. And he tries to get it out of his mind, but he can't. But when it comes to us being semi-functional, semi-intelligent, and semi-successful people, and I say that because we look at success in a way that some of the physical achievements that we have, like jobs, our children, but you know our success is how we interact with each other in society and how we help our fellow man and how we give credit and glory to that have caused us to be that way. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on. But the reason I'm talking about this area over here as much is to completely and show us how unmanageable our life is, and this is where the work is going to be done. Because this part over here would never, ever, ever bother us if we'd never take the first drink. If we never take the first drink, we'll never experience this allergic reaction. In all of my life that I've been in the fellowship and the program, I have never experienced this. Another thing, once I had a personality change, which was in a matter of a few weeks, that's what the book says, I've never experienced this obsession again. Never. That's the astronomical thing. That's the miracle of what we're talking about. That is why we're here tonight, is to look at the processes and the steps that we're going to take to expel this obsession to drink. Because what we are, we're in a grip of something, of thinking, a thought that tells us that we can do something that our body is guaranteeing that we'll never ever do again safely. And I use this, it's like this, because this is like a dam. When we dam off this over here, our mind will operate just like water. You see, water, when you dam up water, it'll hit the dam, it'll go that way, and it'll go that way, and then after a while, it'll back up. But if there's any little crack in that dam, our book says this has to be smashed. This type of thinking has to be smashed. If there's any little seepage in there, we're going to try to find a way to do this. But once this is completely dammed off, the mind is just like anything else. It'll find another solution. Case in point. Around Christmas time, when you buy that toy, and that toy comes with directions. And you ball the directions up and you throw them in the corner. And you proceed to try to put the toy together without the directions. And you sit there and you're puzzled and you're saying it must go this way. And you sit there for hours and ego and pride finally gets the best of you, and you look for another solution and you go back to the corner or the garbage and pick up the directions and read the directions. Also, those of you all who deal with money and you're trying to balance a budget or a checkbook and you're missing a few pence and you cannot for the life of you find out the solution, and you're right there. But when you set that down and leave it and walk away from it and completely, totally disengage the thinking that you have, you walk back to the same problem and then you look at it and it looks completely different. You see, Einstein says, no problem can be solved at the same level of consciousness that caused the problem. You must ascend to a higher level of consciousness. And as long as we're stooped in this, thinking that we can solve this problem with the same level of thinking, we're going to be part of the problem. Another thing, it is impossible to teach a person that he thinks he already knows. You see, one of our major things that we say is when someone tries to show us something, they'll try to show us a different way or another option, and this is what we'll say. I know. Someone's trying to explain, I know. Well, the thing is, that's one of the things. And here's another thing that we'll do. It's when someone shows us a solution, and finally we see the solution, this is what we'll do. I should have known that. Well, if you should have known it, no, we don't know everything. We think we know, and then we think we should know. But the point is that we're all collected to help each other, and we don't know. And you know what? Here's another one. One of the best answers that you could ever give when a person asks you something is, I don't know. That's all I don't know. And that saves a lot of heartache and a lot of lying and a lot of face saving if you say, I don't know. But we always try to figure out some answer to give. Oh, well, maybe, and it's this ego, this pride, this unmanageability, the emotions when we're put on the spot. And all we have to do is say that we don't know. Now, what's wrong with us when we're stone cold sober and we put ourselves into emotional situations like that when someone asks us a question that we don't know the answer and we pretend? I'm still talking about the unmanageability of life. Daily things that we do. Why is it that we have a problem letting people see who we really are? Why is it that we have to present a facade to show people the things that we really aren't? And why is it that we have to lie to ourselves to tell ourselves and present this facade to people? That's because of our personality. Our personality is one of such, of selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, and inconsiderate, and frightened. And another thing is this. The good part about it is that we're of the minority, and we're not the only one that have these character defects. Bill calls it, when he writes in the book, and look at the adjectives that he uses. He says the alcoholic is an extreme case of self-will run riot. And riotous means out of control. And then on top of that, you see, normal people have self-will. Their self-will is that of such, and I'm talking about that manageability. Their self-will of one of such is that at probably 300 degrees, normal people. But he said the alcoholics is extreme, so that kicks ours up to about 3,000. And then he says run riot. Riotous mean completely out of control, so that kicks it up to about 10,000. And then he caps it off by saying this, but he usually doesn't think so. Out of all of this, out of proportion, we're the last one to think that we have a problem. So that puts it off the scale. So therefore, back to this emotion barometer. Now we know that the problems that we can have out of being physically uncomfortable, but what about emotionally uncomfortable? That's where we're off the scale, and that's where no way, no how that our intellect that we have is going to be able to control a power like this, emotional and feelings. So therefore, we have to and we must come to a power greater than this. Now we can understand how great the power is within ourselves when it causes us to operate against self-will. We can understand that. All of us have said things and done things that we said we weren't going to do. And it makes no difference what you tell the wife, the husband, the barrister, the magistrate, the doctor. It makes no difference what you tell them. It's what you tell yourself. When you tell yourself that you're not going to take another drink and you go against that, then that's a power greater than you. That means that whatever power that you think you have is non-existence when it's obsession. So step one says, admit we're powerless over alcohol, / that our lives have become unmanageable. That's the first step. Admitting that we're powerless and that our life has become unmanageable. The unmanageability of life is not necessarily with alcohol. We understand that the unmanageability of life is without alcohol. Have we come to that realism? That without alcohol, that our life is still unmanageable. And that's the part that we have to look at, and that's the part we have to accept, because without a willing and persistent effort to deal with this personality change, little or no success can be had. So that's the first step. It's 9:14. I'm going to go ahead. I think Sally wants to, we're going to end tonight a little early, about 11:45, but I'm going to go ahead and go into the second step. But once we see this condition, if we got this condition prevalent in our life, we can't drink and we can't quit, and that renders us powerless. There's no way, no how that we're only ever going to have a successful life. We're never going to be able to have successful marriages. We're never going to be able to have a successful career. We're never going to be able to have health, and we're never going to be able to stay out of the legal system. This condition would put us in one or all of those. So we look at this like this. If powerless is an explanation of the problem, which is step one, which is a problem, it's twofold, physical and mental, which is powerless. Those of you all want to get you something to drink, please do, not a problem. I thank God that my ego has been deflated to some degree of pointlessness. That's not what it's about, so thank you. So this is the explanation of the problem. Once we understand the problem, the solution is simple. If the problem is powerless, then the solution is power. Power where? Working in the mind. That's where the power's got to work. Remember, the body is going to remain the same. It's going to remain the same. Here's another thing I want to bring to your attention. I'm 55 years old. I have physical ailments. My body does not metabolize sugar. And that's been about 19 years ago. Now, by virtue of old age and by virtue of my metabolism slowing down, I would have to believe a lie to think that if I had a problem with sugar, metabolizing sugar 18, 19 years ago, to think that I could use sugar today. By thinking of old age, my body's slowing down, my metabolism. Now, here it is, the same way with my drinking. I haven't had a drink in 24 years. I would have to believe a lie today for me to take a drink. I would have to say, mister, 24 years ago, the drink almost killed me, almost landed me in prison for the rest of my life. I had a divorce, I lost home, separated me from my family, but today, I've got 20 pounds in my pocket. So give me a drink of the same thing. I have to believe that it's going to be different. And that's a lie. Why would I? Now my body is worse by virtue of age. I'm going to crave stronger. My metabolism is worse. Now see, these are facts that I can run through myself. And I could tell myself a lie. Now, you hadn't had a drink in 24 years, but you know what? It's going to be different today. A one won't hurt you. But the fact of the matter is, my drinking is going to be harder. Matter of fact, I don't know how long I'll be able to drink. I'm taking medication. It can interact. I'd have to believe a lie for me to do that. But now, the solution of power, our book says, it has to be greater, not less than, and not equal to. Not less than and not equal to. Now, the only thing that we can muster up that's equal to us is willpower. We can't muster up anything stronger than willpower. If we could, we would have done it before now. So therefore, we look at this power, talks about it on page 17, and I'm going to read a little bit about it. Just a brief part. I'm going to do a little ad-libbing here, because it talks about this power. Page 17. And it starts off that we're average Americans. I'm going to say we're average people. That's what it's going to say. It says, we're Alcoholics Anonymous, 1,000 men and women who were once just as hopeless as Bill. Nearly all have recovered, not recovering, recovered. It says they have solved the drink problem. We're average people, all sections of this world, and many of these occupations are represented, as well as many political, economic, social, and religious backgrounds. We're people who normally would not mix. You see, if we brought in certain race, sex, ethnic, religion, man, we'd all be in here arguing because we all come from a different. But here we are, we got a problem that affects us the same. It says, we're people who normally would not mix, but there exists among us a fellowship. So that's part of one of this problem, of the solution, the fellowship. That's the AA fellowship, which is a very strong thing. And then it says, a friendliness and understanding which is indescribably wonderful. And then he goes on to use the analogy of the Titanic. Well, like the passengers of a great liner, the moment after rescue from shipwreck, when camaraderie and joyousness and democracy pervade the vessel from steerage to captain's table. Unlike the feelings of the ship passengers, however, our joy in escape from disaster does not subside as we go our individual ways. The feeling of having shared a common peril and is one element in the powerful cement that binds us. This is one element. Now, there is power in the fellowship. And the power in the fellowship is one of such that there is powers in numbers. And we can look around the room and we can look at each other and we can get some degree of suspicion that something that these people are talking about might be worth me listening to. But it says, but that in itself would never have held us together as we're now joined. So this alone is not the thing that keeps us here. Also, on page 15, Bill writes, the only reason that the old timers like Eugene and Sally come to meetings is so the newcomers can find the meetings that they seek. That's the reason the old timers are here. Because without the old timers and carrying the message would get lost. So this AA fellowship is one of such that's human. It's made up of sponsors. And what this does is supports us for a while. That's all it does. It temporarily supports us. This is the message. That's the only place you can find the message is in an AA fellowship. Can't find it in church. Can't find it in PTA or anything. You have to come to an AA meeting to find the old timers, and the old timers is going to give you the message. Now, what is the message? The message is the people here, when you come to a meeting, should be talking about this, the AA program, which is a book, which is the 12 steps. Now, this is what it says about this. The tremendous fact for every one of us is that we have discovered a common solution. We have a way out on which we can absolutely agree and upon which we can join in brotherly and harmonious action. You see, there's no action in this. Only thing, you just come to a meeting and sit and listen, but you haven't done anything. But when we talk about doing the work, the action, that's the 12 steps. And the 12 steps does this. It changes us. And also, this is recovery. This is a message of recovery, and it's recovery. You cannot recover by coming to a meeting. The steps has to be taken. Now, let me show you, here's another thing here. Let me read this right quick. This is on page 60 in our big book. It says, the description of the alcoholic, which is the doctor's opinion, the chapter to the agnostic, which is the chapter to the agnostic, our personal adventures before and after, which is Bill's story, make clear 3 pertinent ideas. And that is this. A, that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own life. That B, no human power, this is human, could relieve us of our alcoholism, and C, this is the second part of step 2, God could and would if he was sought. That's the ABCs. And our original version says, if you're not convinced of these 3 vital issues, 1, 2, 3, you ought to reread the book to this point and else throw it away. There's no sense in even trying to go forward. And also it says in our book that if you're not convinced, find the nearest bar and try some controlled drinking. And this is what the book says. This is not as I say. This is what our book says. These are the ABCs of alcoholism. A, that we were powerless over alcohol and couldn't manage our own lives. That B, no human power could relieve us of our alcoholism. And C, that God could and would if we were sought. Now, jump it a little bit, just to emphasize the point. That's the only thing that I have is this book to use, and that's page 45 in Weak Gnostics. It says, lack of power was our dilemma, and we had to find a power by which we could live. And it had to be a power greater than ourselves. Obviously, it's one of the shortest sentences in the big book. The other one is nonsense. And it says, but where and how were we to find this power? And then it says, well, that's exactly what the meetings are about. Of course not. It says that's exactly what this book is about. And then it says, its main object is to enable you to find a power equal to you, greater than you, that which will solve my problem. Now your problem. Mine's been solved. So if you're waffling or trying to figure out whether you are, let me say this. You know what? The only person who knows for a fact that they're an alcoholic is a recovered alcoholic. Because you know your dilemma and you know what solved it. You know, there's a lot of people that are sick and don't know they're sick until they recover. And they'll say, man, I was pretty sick, wasn't I? Yes, you were. But there's one that said, well, I'm not sick. I ain't no alcoholic. Well, they don't know they're sick. And they still, I may be, I may not, you know. So the only true alcoholic is a recovered alcoholic. And then it says, that means we have written a book which we believe to be spiritual as well as moral. One more thing I want to draw your attention to, and that's at the bottom of page 14. And this is what Bill tells Eddie, or Eddie tells Bill, I'm sorry. And he said, my friend had emphasized, and look at the words that he's using, the absolute necessity of demonstrating these principles in all of my affairs. Particularly, it was imperative to work with others as he had worked with me. We were talking about this tonight. It makes no difference how much time you have in this program. The most important time is how much you have for the newcomer. Most people get all this time and they go off and find a fortune. They don't want to help the suffering alcoholic. Someone had to be around to help us. That's why I take my head off to Gene. Oh, but if he had chosen to go somewhere else tonight or to do something else, but he's here, being of service to his fellow alcoholics. And then he goes on to say, faith without works was dead, he said. How appallingly true for the alcoholic. For if an alcoholic failed to make 90 meetings in 90 days, no, I didn't say that. For if an alcoholic failed to perfect and enlarge his spiritual life through not getting a sponsor, working the steps on his own, no, I didn't say that. It says, if he failed to perfect and enlarge his spiritual life through work and self-sacrifice for others, he could not survive the certain trials and low spots ahead. If he did not work, he would surely drink. If he did not work, this is coming to the meeting and this is a work. This is a self-sacrifice and working with others. Coming to meetings, if you've gotten anything, then you should be willing to give back to the newcomer. This is a work that we do. And when we sponsor people, we work the steps all over again ourselves. Not only do we work the steps, but we're demonstrating the very principles that got us to that point. No alcoholic can be too high that he can't bend down to help a newcomer. Lest we forget where we come from. So when we look at these two solutions, this power and this power, this supports us to a point, and this should be talking about this, the 12 steps, because that's the part that changes us. That changes our thought process, that changes our behavior, our thinking, and anything else. And you know, this program is so powerful that a person can achieve just about any level of change that he wants. If you want to stop drinking, it'll do that too. But you'll be miserable. But if you want to change your life, you see, we have some tools that will change our lives greater and beyond a manner of living that we would ever dream. See, this is unlimited. This is going to change by age, these meetings. Or it's going to change by drinking. You see people one week, you don't see them another. Therefore, you cannot depend upon this. You can't depend upon a doorknob or a tree. They might change the doorknob or cut the tree down. And what you going to do then if they take the doorknob? It has to be something greater than you, and it has to be something with all knowing and all power. Now, you don't have to believe as I believe, but you do have to believe different than what you're already believing. That's a simpler way. So this process here is one of such. Step one is a willingness, and hopefully booze will do that. And step two is believe. Simpler way. All we have to do is be willing to admit that we're powerless. We don't have to admit that we're alcoholic. And the only thing we have to do is believe that this is better than that. That's all you have to do is believe that it's better. We know about this a little bit. And if you've been sitting here and listening to the explanation, something has brought the light bulb on and why we can't drink and why we can't quit. And we say, oh yeah, but this is a question mark here. Last night, I took this step backing away from here. I didn't want this anymore. I didn't know what this would be, but you know what? Something told me that it might just be better than this. Now, to find this, I had to do this, take the steps. You see, the book is the steps and the direction of the steps. This is just a fellowship of men and women that's going to share their experience, strength, and hope about this. We can pick the smallest person in the room, and all of us can pile on top of that person. An obsession can hit them. And you know what? The only thing we can do is keep them from drinking as long as we was on top of them. But the moment we released them, they would go and drink. We could chain you to a tree and it would stop you from drinking. But what it's going to do about this? The moment that they loose you from the chain, some of us have been to jail and some of us have been to prison. You see, the only thing that does is restrict the physical body. It does nothing for the mind. And the moment the mind is sitting there thinking, racing with sorrow and guilt and remorse, how did I get myself into this? I'm not going to do this again. Oh, me, oh, man. Poor me, poor me. And the moment they release the body, boom, there goes a man. We're looking for the same thing that put us right where we just got out. Now, something's wrong with that type of thinking. And that thinking has to be changed by this. So when we look at the AA fellowship, as a matter of fact, to the contrary, the first one that came was this one. You see, this was first. This was second. This one came from the book. And the book took its name from the fellowship. The steps produced the fellowship, and the fellowship produced the name. Hence, Alcoholics Anonymous. But you know, we've got that backwards. AA has changed so until now it's a social status. I was just talking to someone the other night about how we humans have been misusing this powerful program. Some of you all may have heard about our congressman, a couple of them. One was Kennedy, one of the Kennedy clan. He gets drunk and runs into a concrete barrier. He's drunk, and he says that he's just leaving Congress, a session in Congress, and it's about midnight at night. And he immediately goes into treatment. Now, I'm not bringing in an image or anything, because this is public knowledge. And then the latest thing was Congressman Mark Foley. He gets caught sending emails to one of the pages, and immediately he says he's an alcoholic, and he says he's been abused by his priest. And people are saying, well, I guess if you got a problem, run the AA, or run the treatment, and it's forgiven. Now, you know what? Where did they get that particular type of ideology about our program? You see, it's the responsibility of us, and right now today, worldwide. You see, when the program was first instituted, it was very anonymous, but it was very effective. And in 1976, a guy called Grisham did a study on Alcoholics Anonymous. And he deemed there was 3 AAs. One was the weak cup of tea, the other one was the medium cup of tea, and the other one was the strong cup of tea. And the weak cup of tea was the people that came into AA and may or may not took the first 3 steps. And they came in and they go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 out. They call it the AA waltz. And the medium cup of tea was the people that came in and half attempted to do an inventory and would not get completely honest, or made it to their amends and would not do their amends and would receive some degree of dry time. Changed sponsors up and down and would profess that they had a spiritual awakening and would be around the meetings doing all manner of things. 13, 14, whatever type of step you want to call it, that's what they would do. And would have 10, 15 years of dry time and would still be using people. You see, I said earlier, you can see people like that are still, you see, we have hangovers from drunkenness, and then we have emotional hangovers. Hangovers by which we do emotional things and we bring them over in the next day. And you can see those particular type of people, that they continue to be angry, they continue to be resentful, they continue to have a lot of fear, and they're continuing riddled with guilt and remorse, and they are continually harming people. Those are the indications of a spiritual ill person, and our book talks about that. Although we do not like their symptoms and the effects that they have upon us, but they, like ourselves, are sick too. Now, the strong cup of tea are the people who do the whole deal. And that is the people that come in, receive something, and give something back. Tirelessly give something back. And they sponsor people, and they still have a sponsor. You see, in closing, let me show you this. Here we are in the middle, and we have a sponsor, and we have a sponsee. Now, the sponsor is one of such that demonstrates the principles through us, and we practice those. And we have to talk to the sponsor every day to get what he has, because he has to come down to our level. I can't attain the Eugene's level. I've never had 46 years of sobriety. I can just imagine. But he has something that I don't have. I could never, ever, ever be equal to his sobriety. So therefore, I have to be willing to listen to him. And then we got this person here. Because if I receive something from him, then I've got to take that to the newcomer. So I've got to always be willing to go down. So what that does is places us in the middle. We have to ascend and descend on a daily basis. We have to come down to their level. There's no way a newcomer is going to attain to where we are. They can't fathom what we talk about when we talk about 24th, 30th, 10 years of sobriety. They can't fathom that. Remember where you come from. You have to be able to come down to their level to be able to give them some of your experience, strength, and hope so they can obtain up here. So that's why we need to keep a sponsor and sponsor people. And that's how the program works on a daily basis. We're out of time. Tomorrow we're going to do a recap, a recapitulation or a review of what we've done, and we're going to move on to step 3. Thank you for your time and attention.